To understand Brigsby Bear is to understand the specific, dusty warmth of a VHS tape that has been rewound too many times. It is a film that operates not on the logic of a standard kidnapping thriller or a fish-out-of-water comedy, though it technically occupies the space of both, but rather on the dream logic of obsession and the healing power of completion. Directed by Dave McCary and co-written by its star Kyle Mooney, the film is a kaleidoscope of trauma and creativity, exploring how the fictions we are fed can become the realities we forge. The story begins in a hermetically sealed universe, a bunker where James Pope lives with his parents, Ted and April. The outside world is a toxic wasteland, ravaged by obscure dangers, or so he is told. In this claustrophobic subterranean existence, James's only window to meaning is Brigsby Bear, a children's television show featuring a giant, animatronic bear who battles the Sun Snatcher. This is not merely a show to James, it is scripture, encyclopedia, and companion. He studies it with the rigor of a doctoral candidate, parsing the mathematics and morality plays embedded in Brigsby's adventures. When the illusion is shattered, it is done so with jarring abruptness. Police raid the bunker, not with the cinematic flair of an action movie, but with the sterile confusion of reality. We learn that Ted and April are not his parents but his abductors, and the toxic wasteland is actually just sunny, mundane Utah. James is returned to his biological family, a group of strangers who are desperate to love him but are utterly alien to his sensibilities. This is where the film takes its most daring tonal risk. In a standard narrative, the Brigsby show, revealed to be a bespoke production created solely by his captor, Ted, to indoctrinate and entertain James, would be treated as a horrific artifact of abuse. It would be something to be burned, a symbol of his imprisonment. However, Brigsby Bear refuses this binary. To James, the show wasn't the cage, it was the light inside the cage. The tragedy is that the show was cancelled abruptly when he was rescued. He is not traumatized by the kidnapping in the way society expects him to be. He is traumatized by the cliffhanger. He is mourning the death of a universe. This creates a fascinating friction between James and the real world. His biological parents and the well-meaning detective want him to assimilate, to watch generic movies, to go to parties, to be normal. But James cannot simply discard the mythology that formed his neural pathways. He is a stranger in a strange land, but unlike most cinematic outsiders who eventually learn that the real world is better, James realizes that the real world is boring and lacks narrative cohesion. The genius of Kyle Mooney's performance lies in his total lack of irony. He plays James not as a man-child or a caricature of stunted growth, but as a bewildered intellectual. When he speaks of Brigsby, he uses the hushed tones of reverence. He is gentle, awkward, and intensely focused. This sincerity becomes the catalyst for the film's second act, which pivots from a story of recovery to a story of production. James decides that if the show is over, he must make the movie to finish the story. He must defeat the Sun Snatcher himself. Here, the film transforms into a love letter to the collaborative chaos of low-budget filmmaking. James befriends Spencer, a local teenager with a distinct lack of direction but a passion for digital aesthetics. Spencer is the first person to look at James's obsession not as a pathology, but as dope. This validation is the turning point. It suggests that the difference between a crazy person and an artist is simply the presence of an audience. As they begin to film, dragging in the detective, to reprise a role, the movie argues that art is the only vessel capable of metabolizing trauma. We must also discuss the complex shadow of Mark Hamill's character, Ted. Hamill, acting with a nuanced restraint, portrays a man who is undeniably a criminal, yet also a dedicated artist. The level of detail he put into the Brigsby show, the props, the storylines, the animatronics, speaks to a twisted form of love. The film does not forgive him, but it acknowledges the complexity of his influence. James is a filmmaker because his captor was a filmmaker. The tools of his imprisonment become the tools of his liberation. This is a sophisticated psychological thread that the movie pulls on gently, never letting it snap into melodrama. The aesthetic of the film mirrors James's internal state. The sequences inside the bunker and the clips of the Brigsby show are rendered in a fuzzy, analog warmth, evoking the nostalgia of 1980s public access television. In contrast, the real world is shot with sharp, digital clarity, often feeling overexposed and harsh. As James begins to make his movie, blending his vintage prop sensibilities with Spencer's modern CGI skills, the visual styles merge. This visual synthesis represents James's integration. He is not rejecting his past, nor is he fully succumbing to the present. He is creating a third space where both can coexist. There is a profound sequence where James visits Ted in prison to get the voice recordings for Brigsby. It is a scene that could have been played for high tension, but instead, it plays for closure. It is a professional consultation between a director and his actor, which happens to take place between a victim and his kidnapper. By reducing Ted to a component of the production, James reclaims his power. He takes the voice of authority that governed his childhood and repurposes it as a sound effect. It is an act of supreme psychological reclamation. As the film hurtles toward its climax, the premiere of James's movie, we are treated to the ultimate catharsis. The audience in the theater laughs and cheers, not at James, but with his creation. The absurdity of the Brigsby universe, once a solitary delusion, becomes a shared experience. The film suggests that we are all, in some way, living in bunkers of our own making, constructed of our niche interests, our favorite stories, and our personal myths. Connecting with others isn't about abandoning those bunkers, but about inviting people inside them. Ultimately, Brigsby Bear is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, but specifically the creative spirit. It posits that the stories we tell ourselves to survive are not lies to be discarded, but foundations to be built upon. It is a film that champions the weird, the obsessive, and the sincere. It asks us to look at the artifacts of our pain and ask, can I make a movie out of this? It ends not with James becoming a normal, suburban kid, but with him becoming himself, a creator, a visionary, and finally, the hero of his own story who has defeated the Sun Snatcher. It leaves the viewer with a lingering, bittersweet hopefulness, a reminder that even if our worlds are fake, the feelings they inspire are undeniably, beautifully real.